Well, good afternoon. Yes, we are in the seat of Lillie, and it's a sodden day here in Queensland, as it has been for much of the last 3 months. Now, we're at the busiest polling booth in the electorate of Lillie. So busy, actually, that the Democracy Sausage has completely sold out, much to the disappointment of myself and the camera operator here, Mark. Now, we won't say that too loudly because we don't want the voters to be deterred from going inside, having their vote, and then coming out the other side. Now, the seat of Lillie, it's held by Annika Wells from the ALP. She holds it on a super slim margin of 0.6%. Recently, she faces competition from the LNP's Vivian Lobo. Now, we didn't have a chance to speak to the candidate this morning, Mr. Lobo, but earlier in this election, the AEC actually referred Mr. Lobo to the Australian Federal Police. Now, that was amid allegations that he was actually registered with the AEC in a false residential address, an address that he actually wasn't living at. Now, Mr. Lobo said he did take a lease out on another property and he intended to move in right away, but commitments in the campaign actually delayed him from moving in. Now, we haven't spoke to Mr. Lobo in the last couple of days, but we understand that investigation is still underway.
Baz, you never want to have a hungry cameraman on your hands, so you might need to get a snack or two for Mark Leonardi, who's one of the good ones up there who you've got with you around the traps. Now, you've been to a few seats in Brisbane this morning. They're going to be really critical in this election, aren't they?
Yes, indeed, Karina. I'll just let you know I did give Mark Leonardi a muesli bar, so he is satiated for the time being. Now, these seats in Queensland will be critical. Now, there's 30 seats in Queensland. Only 6 are held by the ALP right at this moment. In 2019, the state as a whole actually turned away from the ALP. Coalition seats, many of them received large swings. Those that didn't actually saw minor parties gain ground. So it's a really hard battleground for Labor. Now, both Anthony Albanese and the Prime Minister himself spent less time in the state than they did in 2019. Instead, they actually targeted seats. The LNP spent time in Blair, west of Brisbane here, and also trying to strengthen Capricornia to the north. And Labor desperately want to win the far north of Queensland, the seat of Leichhardt, which is currently held by Warren Entsch. Now, this morning we also did get to a polling booth in Dickson where we spoke to Minister Peter Dutton. Now, Peter Dutton could potentially be the opposition leader if the government do lose this election. Now, we did press Minister Dutton on this. He wouldn't comment on this, but instead he reiterated his stance that his government would be, the best for strengthening the economy, and they would have a stronger stance on defence. Let's hear a little bit from Minister Dutton now.
I think the difference, though, economically, I just think is really, really very strong as an issue in people's minds.
Now, as we said, this polling booth is actually quite busy. Now, as we travel around Brisbane, some are not so busy. It's worth noting that this time around 50% of Queenslanders, or over 50%, the most of any state, have actually pre-voted or have registered to postal vote. So a lot of people have already made up their minds.
I wanted to ask you a question about the smaller parties, because the Greens look to be challenging in what would otherwise be safe Liberal or Labor seats in and around Brisbane. But then you also have Pauline Hanson's One Nation and the United Australia Party. What kind of influence are they likely to have on the election in Queensland?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, anecdotally, when we ask people about Pauline Hanson's One Nation and the United Australia Party, a lot of people, they say that they'll put them, in their second preferences. So I think that the fact that these are homegrown parties here, they really hold quite strongly with people who, I guess, are looking for another alternative. The Greens in particular, the seat of Brisbane, the seat of Griffith, which is actually held by the ALP, and the seat of Brisbane, which is held by the Coalition, are both being targeted by the Greens. They're really putting in efforts to destabilise those seats. It's also interesting to note that in Queensland as a whole, the Labor seats, the LP seats, are only in the southeast. So we've got it's such a vast state. So the influence of those minor parties in places like Flynn and Capricornia, all those places in central Queensland, they really can't be understated. We did a trip up to central Queensland last year, and many of the people we spoke to, they swung towards these minor parties last time, and we might even see greater swings towards them this time.
OK, Baz Ruddock reporting there from Brisbane. Hopefully you can get to another polling booth where there are still some sausages left.
We'll try that. Thanks, Karina.